The digestive system is vital so that we can get the nutrients that we need to survive. We need carbohydrates to survive. They give us energy. We also need lipids or fats to survive. They give us energy and they form structures within the body. We need proteins to survive. They build muscle. We also need a series of vitamins and minerals, and we get all of those things from the food that we eat, and we get them through our digestive system. So what happens in the digestive system is food obviously goes into the mouth, and what happens first of all in digestion is food is broken down. So it's physically digested or mechanically digested by your teeth, and you chew your food, and that starts the digestive process. It starts to break up the food. The food then is swallowed from the mouth, and it goes down a tube called the esophagus here. As a quick aside, it's really important that food doesn't go down our trachea to our lungs. So there's actually a little flap here called the epiglottis, and the epiglottis shuts the trachea when we swallow so that the food only goes down our esophagus. And it's actually pushed down the esophagus by a series of muscular contractions. So muscles around the esophagus push the food down the esophagus, and that process, those muscular contractions that push the food down, is actually called peristalsis. But once we've swallowed and peristalsis has pushed the food down the esophagus, it gets to the stomach. And in the stomach, there's a bunch of digestive juices. There's actually even hydrochloric acid in our stomach. And you're thinking, well, why doesn't hydrochloric acid eat us from the inside out? Well, that's because our stomach's actually got a lining of mucus around it, and that protects our stomach from being digested by all the digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid in our stomach. Once the food leaves our stomach, it actually goes so it's gone from the stomach, it actually goes to the small intestine. So it goes through here, and then this is the small intestine here. This really long series of tubes is the small intestine. Now, there's a couple of other things that I'll point out when we're in the small intestine. One is the organ called the liver. So the liver is actually involved in digestion because it produces something called bile. Bile then goes from the liver to the gallbladder where it's stored, and the gallbladder basically puts bile into the small intestine. And bile is important because our stomach, it's really acidic, it's got hydrochloric acid in it, and it's got a bunch of enzymes. We don't want that acid going to the rest of our body. So bile is released into the start of the small intestine, and that neutralizes the acid. So in fact returns the pH from being really acidic, or it's around about 2 on the pH scale, to being back to neutral, which is about 7 on the pH scale. Another organ here is called the pancreas, and the pancreas creates and also secretes a series of digestive juices and enzymes. And enzymes help digest food. So enzymes chemically digest food. So when you have little bits of food, an enzyme comes up and it breaks those little teeny tiny molecules. Enzymes come up and break those molecules apart to get them into really small molecules like single bits of glucose. So glucose is a really simple carbohydrate. So we can break starch down into glucose, or it might break proteins down into their simplest form, and that's an amino acid. So once the food's been broken down in the small intestine, it does get absorbed into the body, into the bloodstream to be transported around the body. And after it's been through the small intestine, really digested in the stomach, digested and absorbed in the small intestine, what's left, because it's not really food now, what's left goes from the small intestine into the large intestine, and in the large intestine some extra water is absorbed back into the body because water is really useful for us. Then it goes through the rest of the large intestine through the colon, stored a little bit in the rectum, and then it exits our body via the anus. So that's the digestive system. We put food into one little tube, it goes all the way down, it's digested. Any good nutrients are taken out of the digestive system, out of this, it's really one long tube, out of the long tube and put into our body, into our bloodstream, and then what we don't need leaves our body through the anus, and then we keep eating, and it basically gives us the energy that we need to survive.